Hello and welcome back to another episode of You Want to Do What. Today we've got Rachel and Robyn on, who are the co-founders of a social media app called Step. Hi guys.
Hi.
Hey.
How are we both?
Yeah, very good. How are you?
Yeah, good. I was just saying it's been a bit of a long week already and it's just Wednesday. So be happy to get to the weekend.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. I feel like it's always this time of year as well. The days really do just drag on and you feel like you're working into the evening because it's dark so early.
Yes, so true. Guys, should we start off with talking about your careers independently before we get to you founding Step? So Rachel, do you want to give us an idea of your career so far?
Yeah, sure. So I started my career off in fashion licensing. So it was specifically for apparel. So I worked with the Disney, Universal, Sony's of the world, and I licensed their IP. And I specifically looked after band t-shirts. So working with them to, take maybe a 3-year license out for a band, and then we produce for high street companies, like Primark, Topshop, who wanted licensed goods. And then after that, I went into brand management. So I worked for a joint venture with a creative artist agency, CAA, and Global Brands Group. In the brand management side. And actually, there's quite a lot of synergies with my job there and Step, because we worked with a lot of influencers and celebrities, connecting them with brands. And, we have our culture curators on the platform. So, yeah.
Cool.
And then Step after
that. So why did you go into that? Did you have an interest in that kind of branding world and licensing, and why did you go into
it? Just kind of fell into the licensing side. But I was very interested in the brand management side of things. I studied anthropology and visual practice. So I guess there's a bit of synergies of, humans and the anthropology side, and then visual practice being, the brand side. And I'm also, we both, Robyn and I, really care about brand equity. And so, it was very interesting. And creative artist agency is an, huge company. And so it was quite special working with them, and then also Global Brands Group. And they had a great roster of brands.
Yeah, sounds really cool.
And Robyn, what was sort of your story up until Step?
Yeah, I think it's kind of funny when you're asked this question, because does anyone ever really choose what they end up in, other than maybe having interests, unless you are taking a vocational degree to be a lawyer or a doctor or whatever? I feel like the paths are very winding, aren't they? And where you end up is really not anywhere near where you started a lot of the time. So I actually was in university in Canada studying to be a lawyer. Well, I did my undergrad in political science and Spanish, because they make you do major minors over there. And then that was supposed to lead to a law degree back in the UK, a conversion degree. But basically, I was working in a retail store in Canada while I was at university. And it's kind of like a really big company out there. It's something like Zara meets Topshop, but a little bit cooler. It's called Aritzia. Mm-hmm. And they basically poached me straight out of university, and I didn't really want to leave Canada, and I wasn't ready to go and take a serious law degree. So they poached me into their marketing department to be in retail marketing, which I didn't choose. I didn't know anything about retail marketing. I just stumbled across that job and landed in that role. And I stuck that out for about a year and realized quite quickly I hated everything to do with physical logistics and shipping and packaging and anything that had physical delays and I honestly, I think I cried in the packing room about 15 times in that 1 year, just because the logistics around the stores needing bags on time, and then suddenly the post is delayed, and it all falls on me that people don't have shopping bags. I mean, end of the world, right? People don't have their beautiful bags to show off their consumerism. So I realized quite quickly that was not the space I was going to flourish in. But I really loved marketing, and I decided quite quickly I didn't want to go into law. So I moved back to London. working for an NGO in ocean conservation, which I helped start with some friends in New York called Oceanic Global. And I launched their digital, which was really cool. They're really big now, actually. They just started working as the official partner with the United Nations for World Oceans Day.
Wow.
So yeah, so I was part of the founding team there, and yeah, launched their everything digital basically, which was amazing. And I funded that because we weren't really paying ourselves. I funded that through the money that I'd made selling my soul working for a big corporate. And yeah, and then realized that I needed to support myself in London, and working for a startup with no income was not going to fly. So I went and just took a job working in a digital marketing and PR agency, a small one in London. Ended up realizing I hated basically working for anybody else. I'm pretty sure quite a lot of founders have that story as well. And then started my own digital marketing consultancy, working with small to mid-sized startups with a friend of mine. And I did that for 3 years until Rachel and I came up with the idea for Step, which I guess is maybe a segue to another story.
Yeah, I mean, it leads us nicely in. I don't mind who answers or whether you both answer together. But how did you come up with Step? What is Step, and how did it all come about?
Yeah, I think Robyn and I, we both had the exact same pain point, that there wasn't a platform in the market that was easy to share, save, and find recommendations. So I personally had a list for every city that I've been to, divided up by different categories. And, I would send it to my friends. Then they would have to put it into Google Maps. And then they would also have to do their own research, because, they might not like that bar that I was into in Berlin. So yeah, it was a massive pain point for both Robyn and I. Robyn was using Google Pins. And so yeah, we were sitting at Soho House over a drink, and then Step was born.
Very cool. So how long has it been going, and how did you actually decide to take the leap to do it? Because that's a big step.
Shall I jump in here, Ray?
Yeah, go.
So yeah, I mean, I guess what's probably quite relevant to this podcast, and what I think is nice to talk about, is that it's really difficult to start a business, and it's really difficult to keep going. And the businesses that you see that are successful are because people have gone through a lot of painful moments. And one of those moments was for us actually deciding to do it. So we spent about 3 months from that moment of having this aha, we've got something great, there's a space in the market, to actually doing the due diligence of market research, figuring out who the other players were in the space already, why they weren't going to solve this problem in the way that we wanted them to, really speaking to our friends, our target audience, as to what they didn't like about these other propositions, whether they'd even heard of them. And then we came up with a business proposal, and Rachel had actually already left her job at that point and was doing a lot of business training and young entrepreneur courses and stuff like that. But I was still working, and I knew that I couldn't leave, and I didn't want to leave my business to start a new one until we actually had the funding we needed to get it going. So we pitched for 8 months to get the pre-seed, because it was 2 girls with no experience in tech, with a vision and literally a deck asking for £500,000. So that was fun. And I think we were just about to give up and be okay, well, obviously no one's going to give us the money, because it was so much of this conversation. We love you, we love the vision, but come back when you have a product. And we're yeah, but how are we going to have a product if we don't have the money? And everyone's saying the same thing. Yeah. And then yeah, I guess Ray, maybe you can speak to the end of that story, the good part of that story, and then kind of a timeline up to where we are now.
Yeah, so we were in Hong Kong. So yeah, backstory. Robyn and I both grew up in Hong Kong. Robyn went to university in Canada, and I had lived in Canada. Wow. Now we're both here. So we have all these same touch points. So at this point when we're pitching, I was in Hong Kong, and I had pitched to a very good family friend of mine who was very well connected in the startup tech space and just an all-around amazing entrepreneur himself. And he gave another angel the confidence to back us. which was amazing. So that was
Mm.
kind of our first leg up. We then come back to London, and it took us a while actually to find our tech team. Hiring tech talent in London is difficult. Probably one of the second biggest hurdles that we've gone through. We then landed on a contracted agency called Maquito, who are amazing, based in Poland. They've been with us all the way through, actually, and took about 6-7 months to then be in a position to start beta testing, and then coronavirus hit. So we were travel.
So that's a big like penny drop. And then coronavirus hits. And this story got about 2 times longer.
So we're a travel app about to launch, and we're on our socials, we're launching in 2 weeks. There's huge hype around it.
Oh, wow.
So we had to put out a post and tell all of our followers, our waiting list, hey guys, we're not going to actually launch until
psych, we're just joking, we're not launching. And also you don't know it yet, but your whole life is about to change.
And there was zero timeline, right? At that point you're like, oh, we can't even tell you when we're postponing till.
But I think what was funny is that I was really optimistic. I was convinced that it was going to be 2 months. So I went through a wave of depression. It was the beginning, I'm like, oh, but it will be 2 months. I think this is quite a lot of people over COVID. And then it got to 5 months, and Rachel's I think we should think about also picking up other work in the meantime. We don't have money to pay ourselves, all this stuff, we don't know how long. And that was super depressing. That was we didn't even know if the world was going to be the same post pandemic, and it isn't, but it felt so unknown, and it kind of felt is our product even viable anymore? And then I guess it ended up being a blessing in disguise, and we started feeling I don't know, Ray, I started feeling at least luckily towards the end of the pandemic, or the end of that first year, that hey, this is actually what we're meant to be doing right now. We're meant to be speaking to our users. We're meant to be delivering a product that's not just about travel, but is also about community and local exploration. And we were just so fortunate to not have launched pre-COVID, and a lot of people in similar spaces, even a couple of competitors, they were just absolutely dead in the water.
Yeah, I think it was super exciting for us, actually to come out the other end, because there couldn't be a better time to launch a travel app now. Obviously we're looking at it a bit further in the future than, a general consumer would be, but revenge travel is coming,
that pent up desire, right? To get out and see the world. Yeah, exactly.
Everyone wants to travel. And there's now been a shift, obviously, through COVID online. So this hybrid living, using the digital world to explore the real world. So Step really has found its spot.
No, I mean, it sounds wicked. It sounds like it's such a cool idea as well. We were just talking before the podcast that we couldn't think of anything that does what you guys are doing. It's such a gap in the market.
Now that we're fundraising again for our seed round, and we're speaking to VCs and we're looking for institutional money for the first time. It's funny how you really you believe you're unique in this space, and that there's nothing else out there, and none of our friends have heard anything in that space doing that thing. And it is true, all of that is true. But obviously for people in the industry, and once you're doing it and you're digging at all, you're fine combing to find anyone, then there are people out there. So I think that's also been difficult, being told actually us feeling very special and unique, and then being told by a bunch of business people that they're not interested and you're not unique. So I think that's our next uphill battle, is keeping the morale and just powering forward, because it's just another hill, but it's fine. We've climbed hills before, so I feel that's quite tough right now.
Yeah, it's funny, back to the hill analogy. Once you climb the hill, you're then oh, I could do that again. And I feel that is building a business. There's constantly these hills, and the reason you keep going forward is because they feel small once you've climbed them.
Yeah, that's a great analogy.
Yeah.
Well, slash also you just can't go back.
Yeah.
There is no way back. There is only one way forward. We need to find a way.
For you guys, obviously being not working in the tech world, but having to create a team to create your product, how challenging was that? You obviously said you had some challenges and eventually found a team, but I suppose these days so many things are going into a digital tech space, but not everyone's got those skills. What sort of things did you do to help familiarize yourself with that world and understand what was actually going on?
I feel like you just have to take a really passionate interest. I tried to teach myself how to code, which, as Rachel will tell you, was a complete failure, but also it meant that I had to like understand like what you could code, like, you know, on an iOS versus, you know, on an Android, like the different types of languages. And like tech is just like its own world. If you imagine like the globe, like there are so many different languages and you can never speak them all. So I think that was just a really crazy learning. Like when we first went into the discovery process with our team in Poland around like, or what we were going to develop and in what language. And I was like, what do you mean in what language? This is crazy. And like the way that you structure those development sprints and like manage a tech team, like it was just so much learning. But I really believe that like anyone is capable of moving into a different sector and thriving if they're really interested. Because like when it's your own business and you're so excited about making it work, you're going to spend that all night, you know, learning how to create a cap table, or as Rachel will tell you, is not one of her favorite things to do, but also she's nailed that one. And, you know, me learning about tech languages and how to manage product development and pipelines and stuff like that. And you have to do all of it at the beginning when you're the founders, right? It was just Rachel and I. But now what's amazing is we've been able to start hiring incredible talent who can step in and do a job that's 10 times better than you've ever done.
That's actually a really good point there. When you are hiring, what are you guys looking for? You know, as founders, and you know, this product is your baby, you know, what are you looking for in people when you're hiring? Whether that be skill sets, personality traits, what are some things that really stand out for you guys?
Yeah, so we so just a bit of backstory in terms of our hiring process. We hired our CPO, and she just started in January. We actually did the job listing in the summer, so it took a long time. But we really, at this level, because we're hiring pretty senior, we're hiring someone who's passionate about what they do, but also an expert, because as Robyn said, we've been learning everything on the job and we're doing an okay job of doing that. But we're not experts at everything, right? We know what we're good at. So if we can fill the room with an expert in every field, I think then we got a perfect team.
Yeah, I think you always want to find good babysitters, don't you? You know, if you're going to hand over your child to someone, you want to know that they're in really good hands, especially when there's so much to do that even like our hiring of senior people is like obviously one by one right now. And as Rachel said, it takes so long. So like now we have a CPO who's managing product, which means thank God that portion of what was on my plate is now off my plate. And I honestly, from the day she started, I just felt a massive sense of relief. And also I completely trusted her just to run with it and do a great job. And because we know the quality of like professional that she is and that she's really passionate about the vision. Again, this is separate from Rachel's point. I think you want to find people with a startup at least, which is obviously all I can speak to, that are really passionate about where you're going and being part of that, because it's messy. You never wear one hat, and you know, it's going to be a struggle and it's not going to be, you know, smooth sailing all the time. So to make sure you have people that are really ready to like, you know, weather the storms with you and, you know, celebrate the wins and be there for the journey, because it is a journey. It's not a 9-to-5 job, you know, it's a lifestyle. A startup is a lifestyle. And that's why lots of startup like people that have worked in startups like say that they could never go anywhere else because they like miss the dynamic energy and the intimacy and the community that really is it kind of comes alive in a startup, because you so quickly feel like a family. You don't really have to build a culture in the way that big companies do, because you're so intimately connected at like when you're in that startup phase, that it feels very, I would say it feels very intimate, and like you really are a family.
I think you guys brought up a really good point, and we haven't really talked about it, surprisingly enough, on the podcast, and it's about expertise. So being a founder, you guys have talked about it well. You have to dip your your toes into loads and loads of different parts of the business. But when you're hiring as founders, you want to bring someone in who is an expert at a certain part, right? So for anyone listening and thinking of going into a tech career or whatever, whether it be social media, whatever, is it right in saying that, if you focus down and really become an expert in whatever it be, even if it's a tiny, tiny part of the tech world, that's what you guys value?
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think what we're finding is, because there's such a small team, as we mentioned before, you have to wear that hat. They have to be a go-getter. And we don't have the time to manage that next employee. So if they're not an expert and they don't know how to manage themselves or manage the team that will be below them, then, then they're not going to do a good job. And Patsy is so incredible. And she, from the moment she started, hit the ground running, and she took control, and that's what we need.
I think there's a nuance though. I think that startups have two things of value to people. I think in larger companies, I disagree. I don't think you need to be an expert. And I think a lot of mid-sized companies are actually looking for generalists, that they wear multiple hats. Like they're a PR person, but they're also digital marketing. They also have experience in events. So, those are the kind of people that a lot of companies want for that like big chunk of mid-level jobs where you're getting good salary. It's good positions, and you have room to move up into senior. So I wouldn't say that people need to be specialists. I think that when startups are hiring senior people, they need to be specialists. But also I think that when startups start going through an interesting stage of growth, like, just before that, or from that, like, let's just say from that seed to Series A, where they have enough money to not just be hiring senior people, but actually needing kind of other people in the boat as well to do less senior positions or roles or whatever, that is a really incredible opportunity to jump in and then like just take the opportunity to grow with the company, and then specialize as the company grows, and then move up quite quickly in an exciting environment that also will definitely like jump you up the ladder once you get out the other side. Like, I mean, I just look at like the people that are taking very senior or like really exciting roles in bigger companies, and if you look at their track record, a lot of them are coming as having ridden the wave with an exciting and successful startup, and they maybe joined as an intern or a social media assistant or whatever it is. And as that company's grown and they've grown with it, they've then been promoted within the company. And then within 3 years, they're stepping out as someone, quote unquote, senior. But it's very hireable and desirable to any other business.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Also, just to Robyn's point about the larger companies, there's a lot of room to jump in a marketing role, potentially a product role, and not necessarily have been an expert in that previously.
Yeah, that's a good point. That is a good point. And we like to talk about this as well, guys. We talk about university versus experience, and I'd like to get your opinions on it. What do you value more, or do you value one over the other?
So I didn't finish university, so I'm experienced. I love learning, don't get me wrong, but I always found learning on the job way more valuable. So I was at a crossroads when I was going to change degrees, and then just decided, oh, well, there's a job opportunity. I'm gonna go and take it and roll with it. And I learned more in that year than I did in, I'd say, all of my education. But that's just me, My younger sister, she is an academic, and I would say that she would disagree with my point. So I think it's very much down to the person.
And when you guys are, going forward, you're going to be doing more hiring. what is maybe a personality trait that you think somebody needs to have in a startup? You said people wear a lot of different hats, but what's something where, you might be better off working in a startup?
I would say a go-getter, especially at a smaller size. When you're only 5 people, everyone needs to be able to get stuck in and help grow the business.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and also like resilient, because I think that there are just going to inevitably be hurdles, and you aren't going to get the same structure and management and like security as you are in any sort of like bigger company. There are so many unknowns. Like one day that it's going to have to be all hands on X putting out that fire, or Y, and like it doesn't matter if you came in and your role was to post on social. Now suddenly we need you here, and you just need to be ready to like flex in, roll up your sleeves, and like get involved.
And for you, for the pair of you over your journey creating this company, what would be some of like the biggest like, oh shit moments? We're actually doing this. We're actually like really getting somewhere. Maybe what's just memorable over the time you've been doing it?
We got App of the Day in July, so 2 months after launching. For me,
Wow.
that was amazing.
That is cool.
Yeah, our phones were blowing up, and there's so many downloads. We didn't even know why we were on there. It was really cool.
Very cool.
Yeah, that was a crazy moment. And then I think just launching it, like it was so weird. I really have no way of explaining it other than it felt like giving birth, because you were so focused. We were so focused on like nurturing the MVP and like bringing it to life. And then like when we launched it, I remember like this, like it was almost like postpartum like trauma, like because then the next day the app is like the notifications are like coming in, there are issues with the tech stack, like all this stuff. And so we had a moment of like excitement and like relief of launching it, and then I suddenly realized, oh my god, now it's live. Like we have this thing that we have to take care of 24/7, and I was like not prepared for it. I was like a parent that like hadn't realized that they have a child for the rest of their life. And then I like honestly I had a full-blown meltdown, I think the end of the first week, just being like, I don't know what to do, like I don't know how to manage this. Like I was so prepared, just focused on building the product and getting it live, and it's like we kind of looked at each other and like, now what do we do?
Real oh shit moment.
Yeah, that was like an oh shit moment in like a very funny way of like, this is so incredible, but like no one can prepare you for this. And I think tech is quite different like that, especially social tech, because we're not building a business where like you start slow and you start like making money, and then you pump more money in, and then you start making more money. It like when you build something that like your initial route is not focused on monetization, but building an incredible product that people are going to use, like it's so hard to like stay on top of the emotions around that, right? Like the number of downloads you get every day, like certain things like that, because we all know how to quantify success based on money, but when you start businesses where you're not quantifying the success of the business on money, it's a lot harder, and it's a lot more important to stay like, stay super focused on the vision and belief in what you're doing and the importance of it. It's like your literal conviction in the importance of your product versus like, we've got loads of money in our bank account right now.
Yeah, on a very small scale, we can understand that. Obviously, growing your podcast, you look at your downloads every day, and it's not monetized yet. So it's we understand what you're talking about on a very small scale.
No, I mean it's exactly the same. It's like it's a useful and important and creative endeavor that like people enjoy, and it's funny that like we benchmark the success or importance or like value of that on money. It's just obviously that's a bit depressing, but it is the reality. That's kind of what we're getting from VCs now as well. That's what's funny, is like we're kind of having to fight that battle while also staying really true to how we feel about what we're building and the importance of what we're building.
Sure. So what does the next year look like for Step? What are you guys doing?
Well, funnily enough, right before this call, I just posted another job on LinkedIn. So We are hiring our senior iOS developer next. We're in the middle of a fundraise as well, which is exciting, but also scary, but more exciting. So once we get the money and we close on our fundraise, we will hire, after the senior iOS, we senior backend, a partnerships manager, and then we want to scale our user base. So everything will be put to the tech mostly. Some money will be put behind marketing, obviously, because that's our main driver of user acquisition right now. But yeah, just growing the product. Take us to Series A. Be the #1 app worldwide.
Global domination.
Yeah.
No, I mean, actually completely counter to that. I think what's nice, and I was kind of like saying this to on a pitch to a VC today, is that I think that like, and I think this is true with your podcast, I think this is going back to this consumerism and like volume thing. Like obviously volume's amazing and really important, but I think that people are now being so much more conscious about the value of what they're consuming, whether that's a podcast and or a social platform. And I think that if you're reaching a really engaged, like specific audience where you're adding like really amazing value, not diluted value like on other platforms like Instagram, whatever, then you have a very strong standing, and you can find interesting and unique ways to monetize so that you can support that. And I think it doesn't need to be this, oh, we're a social platform, therefore we need to have millions and millions of followers to be successful. I think we've passed that, and I really believe that we're seeing the death of mainstream social media as it previously existed. I don't know if you guys feel that, but like I'm so deeply uninterested, well, definitely not interested in Facebook. I don't even have an account anymore. And Instagram is so boring.
Yeah, there's like a mass exodus off these massive social media platforms.
I have to say, I do agree. I mean, the content I consume on Facebook seems to be video content. You know, I'm not interested in somebody's status anymore or whatever. It's all just sort of video content from online publishers and Instagram. Yeah, it does get a bit boring, doesn't it? You know, it's all very much the same. And yeah, no, I think you guys are onto something, definitely. Thank you both so much for your time. Thank you for sharing your story, and wish you both the best of luck with Step.
And thank you too.
Thank you so much. We're really excited about the podcast you guys are doing. I think it's so nice to have a space where people can hear about like, yeah, how you get from one career to another and stuff like that, because people always tell you have to take a set path, and I just definitely don't believe that to be the case.
Yeah.
No, thank you. That's we really appreciate that. Where can people find you, find Step, and everything that you guys are up to?
So our socials are Step Your World, and our website is too. You can download the app on the App Store. We are currently only on iOS, so stay tuned for Android.
Brilliant. Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much. Have a lovely
Thank you.
evening.